We'll have to tell the governor about what we had yesterday. 8:09 is the time, 42 degrees. It's AM 650, KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. And sitting across from me is Governor Matt Mead, because it's the end of the legislative session. He's going to give us a bit of a wrap-up. Doug is here with us as well, because he's got a couple of questions. SnowyElkCoffee.com. They brew it here in Cheyenne. I mean, so it's just a startup company. They're still working out of their house. And they've been dropping by samples. And it's all named after the great Wyoming outdoors. Every kind of coffee is another great Wyoming outdoors name. So that's why the coffee is good. And
well, it's very tasty. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Do you add stuff to your coffee, by the way?
It depends. Like my first cup in the morning, I'll throw some cream in there.
Yeah.
But as I go through the day, I just drink it black.
So. Just straight black. Yeah. Okay, now the legislators are out, so we get to talk about them behind their backs.
Oh, yeah.
This is how this works. Now, there's some things that you did sign, some things that you didn't sign, and a few things that you haven't signed yet. So the first one I wanted to hit on, though, I mean, we can go anywhere with this, but the first one I wanted to hit on was, so you decided not to sign Stand Your Ground, but you didn't stand in its way either. So
right.
What was your thinking there?
You know, there's over my time in office, there's been several occasions where I've chosen not to sign a bill. The other one, for example, was the gold currency. I didn't sign that as either. This one in particular, and I have signed, I think I've probably signed more gun bills in 7 years than any previous governor. But, this one, I didn't see it changing much in terms of what the current law was. And so I thought that, as I looked at it, I thought, I want to make sure that the legislators know, as they look at new gun bills in the past, especially during a budget session, what are you actually changing? And I didn't see improvements in that bill from the current law. And then I also put in there, part of the reason I didn't sign it, and I think this is important, is, I thought that some of the groups during the session went a little overboard in terms of how they were trying to lobby the legislators, and I wanted to send that message as well. I agree and disagree with the legislators individually and collectively, but I do respect very much the work they do, and I think it's important during that effort that they, obviously they're going to get lobbied, but done in a professional way that seems non-threatening, I think was important. And I think that was recognized during the session, and I think those groups made amends for that, but I just don't want to see that in the Wyoming legislature with our citizen legislature.
I did make a point to thank Michael Bloomberg and, of course, Everytown for spending money on full-page ads.
Oh, I did see.
All the Wyoming newspapers.
I didn't see all the Wyoming newspapers. I did see one big, colorful ad. I don't know what those things cost, but I saw that. It was
we could
directed towards me. And
well, I just think we could certainly use the money, and so that was a great influx into the Wyoming economy. So thank them for blowing.
Well, perhaps the time was limited, but if I would have waited, I suspect they would have spent more money. But
Governor, does that influence you in any way, shape, or form?
The outside groups, they don't. I mean, but if it is a Wyoming group, a lobbying group, and they say, we're really for this or they're really against that, I listen to them, and I even bring, on particularly bills that, look like half the people are for it or half the people against, I bring them in the office, say, make your case, and make your case the other way, but I think, for me, I think we have to guard against outside groups, whatever their position is. I am interested in what Wyoming people think about the laws, and that I do listen to. Now, I may, that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with them, but I think it's important to listen to our Wyoming citizens.
Okay, Doug, you had a question about something that wasn't signed.
Yes, the education bill. I understand you've not signed that yet. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. There was two bills. They ran out of time as you were watching it, Doug, on the 20th day, and so there was two bills: the education funding and the CapCon bill. The CapCon bill I signed earlier in the week, and partly the process, so people know, is after they get the bill passed, then it goes through the Attorney General's review. We take another look at it, and then we decide to sign or not to sign. The CapCon bill, there was some urgency on it because it involves, for example, the state hospital, and contractors were sort of waiting by, and so we asked the Attorney General to do a speedy review through the weekend, and we got that signed. The education bill is still on my desk, and we're still doing our review. And having said that, I don't want to suggest we're not going to sign it. It's just something, because it is such a big deal, we want to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So.
Okay, but if for some reason you found some reason you didn't want to sign that, would that bring the legislature back, do you think? Would they have to work on that?
Well, I think they'd have to come back, because you've got to, we can't we can't let education not be funded. And so
sure, I just want to point out we just got rid of them, so I just
no, but I mean, and certainly there's a cost associated with that and inconvenience and everything else, but still I need to make sure, if I reviewed it and I said this isn't good, then that's what I would have to do. I mean, that is the process, but I'm anticipating signing it. It's just last 2 days I was out of town at another event, and we just haven't done our final review on it, but I think we'll get it done this week.
You could issue a line item veto as well, too.
Well, there's a question about that, because the way that attorney generals have interpreted it is if there's multiple appropriations, plural, in the education funding, there's one appropriation. And so, it's a good question, though, because I have been contacted and say, hey, we love this, but line item through that. And the advice we're getting is you cannot line item that bill because there is not multiple appropriations. There's a single.
So it's take it or leave it.
It's take it or leave it. That's right, Doug. Yeah.
Okay. So now I got to apologize for this. The capital funding bill you went ahead and signed, and we took
the CapCon.
We went ahead and put you up there. But the picture that we have, you must have been just talking or something at the time. It looks like the expression on your face is all crap. And you're signing. Now, we just don't want that as a picture. Well, we have to get a picture of you signing with a big smile on your face.
Well, thanks for that, Glenn. My staff and even my wife give me trouble about that, because somehow if I'm thinking, I seem to get a frowny face on it. And my wife's like, you either got to stop thinking. I don't think that's the answer, right?
No. Well, people think I look angry when I'm thinking.
Well, it's it comes easy to some people, but I really have to concentrate on things, and so then I get my concentration face, which is viewed as an angry face.
Just angry. Okay, now with capital funding, though, of course, there's still a lot of pushback about, well, this is above and beyond what we were originally talking about. It's way too much money. But what do you think the final outcome from your point of view is?
I think it's okay. I mean, I wasn't satisfied with everything in there. Just so a point of reference, when I submitted my budget, including CapCon and everything, it is less than what the legislature came out with. They spent more money. My general fund budget was less than it was 10 years ago. But what the legislature did is recognize, there were some projects we had been working on, for example, the State Hospital, Life Resource Center, that you have sunk already a lot of money into them. And if you delay them further, you're going to have extra costs, partly because, if you put a tariff on metal products, likelihood is going to go up. And so I think overall I was okay with the CapCon bill. Like other bills, if I would have written it myself, would have been different perhaps, but I thought it was okay.
Okay. Governor Matt Mead is our guest. It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. 8/8 change the time. It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Governor Matt Mead sitting in the studio with us, going through the Wyoming legislative session. There's one call lined up, so we'll go ahead and give it to him. This is Glenn. Who's on the phone with us?
Good morning, Governor Sim Lee. I should call you the double M governor like I always have.
M. Lee. I've heard that.
Yes, sir. We're spending more money than we're bringing in. And the real issue is we need to sell our coal and stop the regulations on coal like Trump has done. Where are we trying to get our coal to China? And it seems like we've done some lawsuits. Is there any route around them ports that won't let us get our coal out? And that's what's really hurt in Wyoming. And then question 2, this is your last year of governorship. And sometimes you've signed a bill that was proven unconstitutional. Do you feel as a governor that you owe the public an apology? And I would use the example Senate File 104. And I'll hang up and listen.
Real good, tough questions.
Yep. Well, thanks. First, let me address the first question, Emily. There's no question that for coal to get up to the 400 million ton levels that we've experienced, 400 million tons plus, we've experienced some of our best years, that we have to look at exporting coal. So you're exactly right. When the West Coast, particularly Oregon and Washington, have ports that are available and suitable for this, but those two states have a philosophy that is different, certainly, than Wyoming's regarding coal, that legal challenges are appropriate. And we have had legal challenges. We tried to challenge in Oregon, and we got tossed out because they felt we lacked standing. I've been to the state of Washington, to the Millennial Port there a couple of times. The first time I went there, I was greeted with protesters and bullhorns, suggesting again some have a different point of view. But it's going to be a long process. And that Millennial Port over there, I think, is a very suitable port. They've spent a lot of money cleaning it up. And the other part of it is, and I've asked some of the countries that actually want not just coal or American coal, but want specifically Wyoming coal, to help us on this effort, because they're great trading partners. Japan, South Korea, they not only, as I said, they want specifically Wyoming coal. And so we have challenged and will continue to challenge that, but it is important not only for Wyoming but for those wonderful trading partners. In terms of your second question, you look at even President Trump currently in office, and he's had some things that he's done that a court's ruled that he can't do because it doesn't meet the requirements of law. And with regard to the specific bill you were talking about, about two-thirds, shortly, just a little less, two-thirds of the legislators signed that bill. I got an attorney general's opinion on it that said it was legal and constitutional. But ultimately, it's up to the courts to decide. But it's not a deliberate effort by me or presidents or previous governors to do that. We rely upon the advice, and when proven wrong by the courts that the bill that the legislature passed was unconstitutional or otherwise had problems with it, you just go forward. And so, even currently, I point out, that as the courts took up the issue a couple of years ago in terms of gay marriage, they viewed what the state had done as unconstitutional. And I didn't hear from people about, you didn't call about that, Emily, saying, that somebody owes an apology on that. That was the state's point of view at the time, and the courts ruled differently. So I think that is part of the process, and again, I don't think anybody tries to do that deliberately, but the courts have the final say, and the courts appropriately are a separate and third part of our government, and it's important for them to make the decision. But it doesn't mean that either the legislature or the executive branch or me did that in a deliberate way.
The fun thing about doing a radio talk show is it's Russian roulette on the phones. You never know what you're going to get.
You never know what you're going to get.
Or a box of chocolates, for that matter.
Or a box of chocolates.
Yeah, who's on the phone?
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Yeah, hello, Governor. This is Chris in Denver. I follow Wyoming politics pretty closely. I wanted to speak to one particular problem that not only are my friends seeing up in Weld County, but even here in the Denver metro area, where we're having what I've kind of termed Medicaid expansion tourism, where you're having people coming in from Cheyenne to Denver signing up for Medicaid, because a lot of these people don't really have a whole lot of assets, and then getting the treatment they need, heading back to Wyoming. To me, that would not only is that, I think, theft, but there's a lot of Wyoming residents that kind of fall within this donut hole where...
Well, in fact, let me finish the question for you, because we're running a little short on time here. In fact, you wanted to expand that in the state of Wyoming.
Yeah, well, Chris, thanks for the question. So that is all part of the ACA, commonly called Obamacare. And when that came out, I think that was the first lawsuit I had, the Attorney General challenged. We, amongst many other states, we'd lost that. And so we did have this situation where we had roughly 20,000 people in the state of Wyoming who were sort of falling in the cracks. So I did ask the legislature, hey, we tried, we lost the lawsuit, let's make the best of this situation. And so in doing that, I did ask the legislature to expand. What Chris is describing, I guess I'm not aware of, or how he even knows how to, how you track that in terms of numbers. Whether the state of Colorado is doing that, whether the state of Wyoming is doing that. So this is not a situation I was aware of. But I do know that people who are in need of medical help will, or their family will do what they can to get that medical help.
But now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with the Trump administration, but we're still in the situation here in the state of Wyoming, one healthcare company. And boy, you know me, would I love to be able to buy across state lines, make my own plan, just get the government out of it so I can make my own decisions here. So within the time you have left, is there anything we can do?
So it is a challenge because prior to the ACA, we had roughly about 11 insurance companies in the state of Wyoming. Now, not all of them were active, so it overstates it a little bit, but you're exactly right. We're down to one, so we don't have any competition in that area. But we have the state legislature allowed by state law to be able to buy across state lines, and they actually did that. I think it was the year before I came into office. The challenge is, who wants to offer insurance in Wyoming? Because you can still have the law, but still, who wants to offer it? We have year in and year out about the highest health care costs in the country, which is a real challenge for our citizens. But it also prevents, or I guess is an impediment to getting insurance companies coming into the state of Wyoming. Do you want to provide service in the state of Wyoming? What is your return? And so I think that is part of, certainly part of the challenge we have. It's not just the laws themselves, it is the high health care costs we have in the state of Wyoming. And that's why it has been, will continue to be a challenge, and I think that's why we have to look at telemedicine and telehealth and maximizing what we can do in a rural state.
Well, now, that leads me to the question of, you have a little under a year now.
Yeah.
And this is your last legislative session, so we're done with that. So what do you do with the time that you have left? Now, with Governor Friedenthal, on his last day in office, I asked him how long that paperclip chain was that he had been working on at the desk inside the office, and I've always loved that man's laugh. What do you do with your last year?
I actually called Governor Friedenthal because I said, this is year I suspect is going to be a little different, and he said it is a different year because partly you're going to have an election and people rightfully are interested in who the candidates are and going through that. But we have to, what I tell my staff is, listen, we have to keep our foot on the pedal until the last day, and things will be different, and including, people are headhunting my staff right now, and while I don't like that, it's a good thing. I'm proud of my staff and the work that they do. But we're going to lose people. We already have started losing people, and so we're going to have people sort of come in on a temporary basis.
You might be all alone in there,
answering
your own phone.
Well, I hope not. I'm hardly competent to answer the phone. But
well, we got a couple minutes left here. So that includes, did you get everything you wanted with your Endow effort?
Yeah, I think it was it's in terms of Endow, I think it was a tremendous session, and really was excited about that at the end of the session.
Okay, but there is some question that I hear from some people. Well, if we're doing, we're trying to find a way to fund our schools. We're trying to figure that out, and yet we have the Endow program. Well, isn't that money we could have spent on the schools? In other words, are we spending it in the right places?
Well, it's a very good question, a legitimate question, because education, no doubt, is a challenge. But part of the reason we're challenged in education is we've not diversified our economy to the extent it needs to be diversified. We still get a roughly 70% of our revenue year in and year out from one source, and that is minerals. We love the minerals and want to keep those strong. But, when we're, roughly every $5 a fluctuation of a barrel of oil, costs the state about $35 or $40 million, depending upon production levels, we're way too sensitive to those mineral prices. So there's not a great time to say this is when we're going to diversify. If you're at $100 oil, people aren't as interested in it. So we had to move forward on that. And still, with education, we still have robust education funding in the state of Wyoming.
The question everybody, you got less than a minute, and that's the one that everybody wants me to ask you. What was with the guy that broke into the mansion? What happened there? And don't we have security for you? I mean, we were worried there.
Well, thanks. It's right on the interstate there, and we have a puppy that is a big puppy. He's a Great Dane, and
that's a puppy.
He sent out the warning alarm. But a guy comes in with a knife, and
how did he get in?
He broke through a sliding glass window. I mean, just busted it in.
I think what I hear from people is they were surprised anyone could get that close to the governor's mansion.
We have a perimeter fence, and he managed to get over the perimeter fence and get in, and so it's and security. They obviously you're continuing to work on changes, but it was one of those sleepless nights.
Glad everybody's okay.
Thanks,
hey, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Doug. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.